How do you turn a layoff into an opportunity? Well, my guest for this episode did exactly that. Emily Schneider is an entrepreneur and visual storyteller who specializes in presentation design. She helps businesses and leaders confidently transform their messages into beautiful and effective presentations that resonate with their intended audiences. Let's talk about how she started this business in this episode. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Solopreneurs. Well, welcome to the show, Emily. I'm so excited to have you here and talk more about something I'm pretty passionate about, which is storytelling. So let's go ahead and start a little bit with you telling the listeners who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Larry. I'm Emily Schneider. I'm a visual storyteller. I specialize in PowerPoint design. My magical knack is taking complex data and information and creating very strategic and visual impactful presentations that help the presenter and the audience connect better, be more engaged, and in the end, drive business success.
I love it. Yeah. I think as somebody who spent 20 years or so in the corporate world, dry corporate presentations are the bane of our existence.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's so interesting when you say it like that, right? Because I think the expectation to know how to use PowerPoint in general, and then present really strong are kind of just supposed to be assumed. But there is so much that really goes into crafting a really strong presentation or giving an update or sharing a case study or giving staff updates. And I think that sometimes there's a disservice because what we think we should be able to do and what we are able to do are not connected. And so I love coming in as like a little secret to other people's toolkits or toolboxes and being part of that solution just to empower them to feel more confident, but also like let them spend their time doing the work that they are really good at.
Right.
And then this is where my zone of genius is. So win-win for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, because not everybody has the skills. They don't have the design skills and they don't have the information design skills to be able to craft a great presentation. And I think they lean too heavily sometimes on the corporate template and they're like, I'll just put information into the template, or they have a PR team, which they're trying to play safe with a corporate template and legal requirements and branding guidelines, and just ends up being kind of all the same. It turns out to be
Yeah.
very vanilla.
Or they don't even have any strategies to think about how to set it up, right? Or
Right. Yeah.
or like when I look at a slide, what am I saying? Like, right? Just those simple strategic questions. If you're not taught them, you don't even know to ask them. You're just
Yes.
told open PowerPoint. And then now that there's templates, you think having this generic background picture is going to make it more dynamic. And it's not about, I mean, it is about what it looks like, but when you're strategic with what it looks like, that's where the power is. It's not just mindless.
It's not a bunch of bullet points.
No, I mean, death by PowerPoint. We all know what that is, right? We're very used to that.
I think I got lucky. I had a friend that used to do these kind of happy hours with various startup founders and people who wrote books, and it was in San Francisco. It was John Boutel and Rashmi Sinha. So thank you guys. And so they had, I'm trying to remember his name, but it was a book he had written around presentation Zen, I think was the title.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a insightful book. And his point of try to have one message per slide, and try to emotionally connect with people. And it changed everything about my presentations where I shifted to imagery that I wanted to evoke the emotion I wanted on that slide, whether it was, oh, we're nervous about competition or we're excited about opportunity or whatever it might be, and then lay in like one word or a couple of words and then speak to it. And from that moment on, I think my presentations completely changed and elevated. It was no longer bullet point, bullet point, bullet point.
And you were probably more confident as a presenter too, right? Like you felt
Oh,
better.
yeah.
Like just having that power. I mean, I always preach there's 3 things to think about. I mean, there's so many details, but like if only the things that like anybody remembers are simplicity, consistency, and intentionality. And if you can apply that to your story overall and as an individual slides, and think about less is more, being consistent with treatments, with colors, with just the approach, and then being intentional to your point of what I'm putting on there is so much power. But until like, I don't know,
Yeah.
knowledge is power, right? So if we don't know what we
Right.
don't know,
Right.
that's like the
Yeah,
biggest, that's
exactly.
what I'm learning.
Exactly.
But yes, being open to understanding something different, I think helps us just
I think it
do better in
does.
other things.
And I'm sure you do this too. It's probably one of your first questions when you work with people is like, who's the audience for this?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually.
What
So
are they expecting?
I break it down to 4 parts or my 4 tips, and we can go into details where you see, but I think it's helpful just to like level set. Like my 4 tips to making impactful presentations are knowing your objectives and your audience, right? What do you want them to think, feel,
Yeah.
and do? And also understanding where and how this message is going to be perceived.
Mm,
That's the
yeah.
benefit about a presentation is it's more of a one-to-one conversation. Marketing is where you share something and you don't know where that
Right.
person is or how that information is going to be digested. So yes, starting with knowing your objectives and understanding your audience, because also understanding your audience tells you how much detail you need to put in
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
what that objective is, right? And then it comes down to crafting a compelling narrative. I am not a content writer, but I love refining content and crafting
Mm-hmm.
that narrative, setting yourself up for success with setting expectations, telling the audience what you want them to do at the end, right?
Right.
Reminding them and being not being overly repetitive, but making sure that you summarize things so that it can click. Then it comes the
Right.
visual, beautiful story once you kind of have your outline, right? And we talked about simplicity, consistency, intentionality.
Right. Right.
Less is always more, streamlining things. Yeah, no, you don't, one, I say 2 to 3 things per slide, but yes, one is ideal. 30 words at the most. Like, how do you have less
Right.
information to really let them listen? These slides should be the background music to this conversation that you're
Mm,
conducting. I like
that's
to
right.
think of it
Yeah.
as empowering my clients to be conversation conductors, just like at an orchestra,
I like
right?
that.
The conductor will stand up on stage and he tells the sections and the musicians when to play, how loud, how soft, and as an audience you are embraced and covered in this harmonious, beautiful experience, right? And you usually
Right.
create an
Yeah.
emotional connection because it's
Yes.
personal, but you put the pieces together. That's exactly what you can do when you are thoughtful and intentional and plan ahead with your presentation.
Right. Yeah.
And then at the end, now you're at delivery, right? You've already set yourself up for success. You know who you're talking to, what you want them to do. You've
Mm-hmm.
laid the groundwork for your outline, and you've been intentional with your slide design and how you use visuals. Amazing. Your delivery is going to be a no-brainer. You're going to talk less. You're going to connect more.
True.
You're going to
Yeah.
build that trust, that credibility. And in the end, you're going to create more of an impact. And people are going to remember how you made them feel and what things looked like versus
Yes.
I was confused. I think I can't ever not share my favorite stat that we're 65% more likely to retain information when it's visually designed. So to your point,
Oh,
when
interesting.
you
I like that.
said
Okay.
you presented based on what you wanted people to feel, you picked imagery and then
Right.
support it with simple words, right? They remember that because there's something really impactful. And visuals don't have to be pictures or illustrations.
Right. Yeah.
They can be data charts. They can be words that are designed really beautifully and
Right.
simply
Yeah.
because there's so much impact. Again, when you're death by PowerPoint is where you put your whole entire script on a slide
Yeah.
and you expect people to not read ahead and to listen to what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Seriously.
All of a sudden, I am in no man's land and I am getting out a random game on my phone because I can't focus, right?
Yeah.
But when you
Yeah.
have the support and when you think of your slides as this beautiful, harmonious background music to your presentation, you kind of are also able to touch all different types of learners. And
Right.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's the last thing you want is people reading and looking at your slides and not paying attention to you,
Hmm.
which
Or
is
jumping ahead,
it's
right?
horrible or jumping
Yeah.
way ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because aren't we naturally, right? Like I
Of
also
course,
kind of
we
like
read
geek out about
faster, right?
we read faster. I geek out about the neuroscience, right? We're used to this attention seeking economy. So if you give me something to look at and it's not focused or it's not built right, I'm going to go ahead, right? And then I'm going to
Yes.
start this own tangent of like, well, what does that mean? Or like, why is that relevant? Or this is too much information. I'm going to check out. And so again, when you can
Mhm.
lead that conversation and you focus exactly on those 2 to 3 details per slide, more slides, less on a slide, go for it. See what
Right.
happens.
Right.
Get your audience to follow along exactly as you want. So in the end, you're right where they're in the sweet spot. They're going to make those decisions they need
Yeah.
to know. They have all the information, or even better, the questions that they ask and the conversation that you engage with them afterwards is so much more meaningful and impactful.
Yeah, I tell my coaching clients that your presentation is a performance. And it
Mm.
is art. It's an art form.
Yeah.
And that I used to have a PR team when I was an exec, and they always wanted to do my slides for me. I was like, "No, nobody does my slides."
Mhm.
Because much like you were just talking about, they would just put like 20 bullets on the page, and it's like everybody's reading. And I said, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I wanna reveal one piece of information at a time, and it's gonna
Mhm.
have builds, and it's gonna have timing, and I'm gonna practice that. And if it's off, it screws up my entire presentation." So I didn't let anyone do my slides or touch my slides because they didn't understand that I actually rehearsed the timing and the fades and the everything down to the
Yeah.
second, because it is. It's performance art. It really does feel like that. And I think a helpful thing for me was looking at some of the best performers. And so I would watch like JFK's speech, Martin Luther King,
I love
President
that.
Obama,
Yeah.
and you go and comedians. So I would watch comedians, and their timing is impeccable, the good ones,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah,
Right? So
yeah.
you learn from that, you're like, "Oh, interesting." You, like, add that 5-second pause where you just look at the audience. The rule of threes with comedy, which I think probably goes into what you were just saying earlier. It's like you gotta remind people, and there's this rule of threes, that something becomes more impactful and funnier the 3rd time it's mentioned, kind of a
Oh,
callback. But if you go 4, it's too far. It's not funny
too
anymore,
far.
right? And it's interesting. I've been observing that, and the best comedians, they do this rule of threes where it kinda comes back later in their show the 3rd time they mention something, and the audience loves it. They love it.
I love that, Larry. I find that, like, it's so true, right? Again, we think I try to empower my clients, but I think it's like it's so natural in life that you think you should know everything, right? And like I'm supposed to know
Right.
how to do this, or why can't I present? I
"What's
can
wrong
talk
with
to
me? Why
people.
don't I know how
Yeah,
to
I'm an
do this?"
extrovert kind of thing. But the fact is like I love seeking outside influence to
Mhm.
become a better person or to be better at a craft or a skill and finding synergies in that. For
Right,
me,
yeah.
like it was opening up the world of books because I was always working and I was like, I don't have time to read. And I was like, no, if I make 5 minutes a day to read, there's so much insight or there's so much, yeah,
Right.
flow and learning or just taking time to get away and remove myself from my work gives me opportunity to actually like unconsciously think about things in such different ways. So I love that. I think we can always learn and grow and you can tap into
Yeah.
outside things that aren't, that are relevant but not the exact same. There's a lot of growth there and potential. That's really cool. I'm gonna start watching more comedy for sure. I love that.
Yeah, it's actually the best comedians. I'm like, "Wow, there's so much to learn from these people." So speaking of influence, your past life, you were an art director, a creative director, a director of brand strategy and marketing. So I can see where that fed into your ability to do what you do, which,
Yeah.
you're very good at that. And then you at some point decided to start this consulting practice. So how did you decide that, and when did that come into your life?
Yes. So I was always working for somebody else. And then in 2019, I actually got laid off and I was 8.5 months pregnant.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was like a very interesting, I worked for a startup. So it was like a little, they had to do what they had to do. Um,
Sure,
it
sure.
was really tough then. It was the best thing that ever happened to me now looking back, right?
I love
The,
hearing you say that. Yeah.
like literally like if I didn't have that, I would never have been open to anything else because I then was able to say, and it was scary because I was like, and I was even still interviewing. Actually, I was told I didn't get a job that I interviewed for 3 hours after I had my little girl. Like
Oh,
because I was
wow.
like, checking email or doing something, and I was like, oops, I guess this is meant to be, right? Kismet. Like I of course I don't want this job. I just had this little baby girl. I want to be home with
Oh,
her.
wow. Yeah.
But I had a mentor that reached out to me and was willing to kind of take a risk on just being a general freelance creative, right? As a creative, there is opportunity to be freelance. It was scary. And
Sure,
especially again,
sure.
going from, a full-time salary job with a steady paycheck to not knowing what that would look like. But again, I was in a position where I knew I didn't want to go back to where I was. I wasn't
Mhm.
sure what I needed to do, but I knew I needed to figure it out a little differently. And I've always kind of said, you know, let's see what happens. Give myself some time period to see if this works, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was general creative designer for about 4.5 years. And then 2023 was very interesting for my business. Things definitely changed. My first meeting of 2023, my client said, we have to terminate our contract. We can't have vendors
Oh, no.
anymore.
Yeah.
And that was like that was like almost like a full time, I think it was like 30 hours a week I was working for them. So like
Oh,
they were basically
wow.
full time. But I took that year to really get curious and to figure it out. And I started raising my hand and saying, I'm available. I can help you. This is what I like doing. And
Nice,
I really
nice.
tapped into all that. I started reading a lot more and figuring out where I leadership books or self-growth books or just even general like fun books just to like see what I was passionate about. Um, and I realized that that got me super curious. I'm super curious in general, but that obviously was a very curious time. And I also just had some good reminders from people close to me and my husband who said, like, it's just a time period. It's just a season. This isn't forever,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
you're going to
Yeah.
figure it out. And eventually I was like, okay, if I get to here and it's still not working or my income keeps going down, like we'll go back and find a job.
Yeah.
And then I realized what I love doing and where I shine and where I have so much fun and I want to
Mm-hmm.
keep working. And it was in presentation design. And I was like, well, how am I going to let people know that this is what I want to do? And I Googled
Right.
something and I found she's now my business coach, but I found a course. And I was like, there's a community of people that do this. And there's a way that I could build a website so I can start sharing about it. And I just bet on myself and said,
That's so
I
cool.
know I love doing this. This is where I shine. And I love that it helps me empower to do things for other people. I love helping people. I love helping them
Right.
shine
Right.
better, be more confident, right? But this avenue let me be part of that solution. I wasn't just coaching people to do it. I was doing the work with them. And
Right.
that
Right.
collaboration, again, it fuels my soul and it makes me shine. And I just believe that like when you're happier and you do the work that you love, it's so easy to keep
Yes.
growing it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. So I bet on myself. And like I said earlier, the only thing I'm perfect at is not giving up. And I've realized that,
Persistence.
yes. And I've realized that, and I'm scared of failing too. Like I'm scared of staying still and I'm scared of being basic and boring. And so those fears with the ability to be perfect and not giving up, right? Like I'm flipping all these crazy things on their
Don't worry,
head.
you're not boring. You're not boring.
Okay, great. Thank you. But anyway, so in January, I officially like relaunched myself as this niche. And it was a little scary, right? Like, again, I used to
Sure.
look at PowerPoint and have this like negative feeling for it, especially as a creative person, right? I was like, nobody
Yeah,
likes
right,
PowerPoint.
right.
But what I realized is actually when I niched myself, it became easier for me to share what I did. I was more
Yes.
clear. My productivity
It's kind of
skyrocketed.
counterintuitive. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, because I'm not all over the place. This is what I do. This is how I focus. If I'm not right for you, I know a whole community of people who are,
Perfect.
and I love
Exactly.
sharing it. And so that's how I got here. I just stayed curious. I kept betting on myself. I wasn't scared of failure. I was scared of staying still.
Mm.
Um, like I said, when I niched it and I was confident in that, it actually has opened up the door to grow my
Yes.
business in so much more ways and so much bigger and faster than I ever could. And now I get to say that like after 9 months, nothing's been perfect. It's been a beautiful journey. I've learned how to make an impact and an income and do the thing that lets me shine bright and also helps other people. And so I couldn't be any happier and proud of myself, to be honest, of where I'm
You
at.
should be. You should
Yeah,
be.
thank you.
Yeah, you kind of personify this concept. That's why I call my community Invincible Career. It's like this concept of becoming invincible, which is you know what you're really good at doing and you're not shy about doubling down on it and letting the world know. And it makes marketing easier because you're not feeling kind of conflicted about what you do. You're like, I know what I do is amazing. I know it really, really helps people. Why wouldn't I talk about it?
Yeah.
Right?
And if I don't talk about it, who's going to talk about it for me?
Yeah, I was going to talk about
Right?
that.
Like I have young
Yeah,
kids too, so I'm trying to empower them. Like if you don't say something, who's going to know? If I don't tell you I love you, how do you know I love you, right? Like it's
right,
that
right.
simple. And so yes, so I have the confidence because I also know that like I'm learning and I didn't realize this, but
Yes.
like people don't even realize that I exist, that somebody like me exists.
Oh,
And so when they
sure. Yeah,
hear,
yeah,
they're like, I need to know more. What does this look like? How do you work with your clients? Because
yeah.
and we right, like it's not always an easy sell, but it's the curiosity is a win too, right? You find those wins and you build upon them as you craft something that's kind of
That's
unique and
right.
different.
That's right. Yeah, and it takes a lot of touch points.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact number, but there's something like 10 to 15 touch points before someone actually decides, okay, I'm going to buy, right? They
Mhm.
need the awareness, they need the consideration, they need the evaluation. And like you said, a lot of people just don't know that this exists. That's an option for them.
Yeah.
And we assume they do. We assume, well, doesn't everybody know what I know? And I
Right,
tell
right. You
people this all the
forget.
time. It's like people
Yeah.
don't know what you know. What
Yeah.
you know is so valuable, and they're like, "What do I have that's valuable for other people?" And I said, "You'd be surprised how many people don't know what you know,
Yeah.
and it could
And
help somebody."
you think that they know, like because it's so natural to you, you think everybody has it too. That's what I've learned. But going back to
Exactly.
like helping your audience, right? When you talk about like this whole point, that's what I love about what I do is I help create that
Right.
credibility, that
Right.
trust, that accountability, so that as that presenter, your points come across and you can bring that
Yeah.
forward in such a better way, because you're able to build that with a strong story when it's planned out, when you're intentional, when you're simple, and when you're
Right.
consistent.
Right. So the people listening, and we talked a little bit about this, tend to be kind of white collar professionals. A lot of folks in tech, a lot of people obviously care about their careers, and they're trying to get ahead. A lot of people who are interested in becoming solopreneurs, or they are solopreneurs, the business people, and so they have small businesses. Who do you tend to work with the most? Who is it that reaches out to you, and who do you partner with? Because you do a lot of collaboration with your
Yep.
presentation design.
I currently find that I'm working with leaders and in larger corporations, to be honest, just because of the need and of the amount of presentations that they need to
Sure.
have
Yeah. They.
and where their focuses are, but also just financially, right? Not every presentation
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
afford the investment in that. I actually think it's like one out of every four can have the has the ROI needed or that importance of that
Interesting.
presentation
Okay.
to spend on somebody like me. But I try to actually also make my work turnkey. So I don't always there are templates I will do, but those aren't my
Hmm.
favorite things. I love doing strategically um, what did the sorry, I lost my words. I like to be custom strategic work, right? So to really take what
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
saying, higher elevation, telling stories, process flows, really elaborating kind of intern like communication and updates and data. But I build the slides and make those masters so they can be used again. Data
Right.
is
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
mostly built in there. So I hope that return on investment can really help. But yeah, I
Yeah.
work with, like I said, founders, CMOs, CFOs,
Mhm.
and I
Okay.
work a lot in tech, pharma, and finance is where I find most of my clients are.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do they find you? So you talked about you're starting to do more marketing, and
Yep.
I would imagine you're starting to get referrals too, that
I
people.
do. I do have a nice referral
Yeah.
base. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I do a lot of my own outreach because
Oh,
I
good.
find
Okay.
again that people don't know that people are looking like they want the help, but they don't ever because they don't know that somebody like me exists. They don't even know that like, hey, I could get help doing this. I can pass this
Right.
off,
Yeah, they don't even
and
start
it's
searching
worth.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently worked with a hedge fund startup company, and the founder found me, and he invested $5,000 in one meeting. He secured a $300,000 investment. So that return on in one meeting was
Right.
60 times
Boom.
what.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
So it was no brainer, right? It becomes a no brainer for him, and it makes and he didn't have to do any work. So like that's really is huge. So I spend
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time on my outreach on LinkedIn and then my website. I love, I'm on podcast, I'm sharing. I just hosted a masterclass yesterday. So I'm trying to add value because, like I said, I know not every presentation can, and not every project or company can afford somebody like me on an every
Sure.
basis.
Yeah.
But if I can empower you to think differently and just be more, again, intentional with your slide design and help elevate that
Right.
story. If it's
Right.
one trick or one tip that helps, like that's a win-win for us all.
Absolutely. So what do you find? So you start working with these people. What are you finding are kind of the repeating patterns of what they struggle with?
They don't know how to focus or like they need help articulating what their focus is. They know what they want it to be,
Mm,
but they don't know
okay.
how to design it to make that impact. So,
Right.
or it's like because whether they have too much information and we need to pull it back or break it
Mm-hmm.
apart, or I have this idea and it needs to flow like this, but like my skill set doesn't allow me to think beyond these shapes or this
Right.
pencil, right?
Sure.
So it depends. And some people aren't as strong of storytellers as others, and so they need, it's always nice to have somebody who you can, again, I kind of borrow. I let them borrow. I say, steal my confidence in you until you believe in yourself. Like, let's
Oh,
do
that's
this.
cool.
You've got it. Because again, when they can see their idea come to life, um, they're so much more. It's so much easier for them to talk
I
about it.
bet they get excited. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can only imagine. So you do it seems like a mix. I know you do the literal design work on the presentations. So there's some visual
Hmm.
design work and probably flow and information architecture kind of stuff. You
Yep.
probably also help them a bit with their storytelling skills and presentation too. What do you see the mix being? How does that break down?
Yeah, definitely spend more time with that visual information architect and just the design standpoint. But naturally, because we're talking about design and hierarchy of
Mhm.
information, we're going to talk about your content and your flow, right? And
Right,
we're going to talk
right.
about how you're delivering it and what you're focusing on. When I do build stuff with clients, whether it's animations or just multiple slides of information building, right? It's about, let's just have it click so you're in control, so that they can
Mhm.
create that confidence. But yeah, I think it's mostly about, I've got an important meeting, I know what I want to say, or I know what I need to
Right.
be saying. I either have old content and slides from all over the place. It doesn't make sense, but I also just need to make sure that like it's clear what I need my boss or these leaders or this team to understand and take
Mhm,
away.
mhm.
And I know what it should be, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't have the time to invest, because again, like, I can save clients hours of work.
Right.
My
Yeah.
my process is about 3 meetings. Usually they're less than an
Okay.
hour to get a full deck completed if you have your outline and content, ready to go. And so that's a lot of time saved from,
Sure.
usually a presentation takes, 10 to 20 hours to build. So
Do you ever find yourself hitting kind of some friction? And I know I have, because I've come in and do like a speech or a keynote talk, and they're like, "Here's our corporate template." I'm like, "Oh, really? I have my own style." And like, we really need it in the corporate template.
yeah.
Do you ever find some friction between your need for freedom of expression and a corporate template that they're providing you with?
I mean, sure, but I always think of those as opportunities, right?
Oh, okay.
As a creative problem solver and just thinker, I like to say I push the boundaries.
Yeah,
There's a
I
rubber
bet.
band, right? And I push it until it breaks. So, but again, clients usually come to me and say, "We have this template. It needs to feel part of the brand, but yes, let's push it. Let's make it
Okay,
feel different
good.
because the information is important." If they're like, "This is just straight up, we need you to put this in the template," to be honest, I usually am not the right designer for them,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
mean, why
usually
would they do that?
established.
Yeah, yeah.
And why would they hire and pay for me to do that per slide, right? And again, that's where I love referrals. If I'm like, this isn't it, because at that point, usually budget is like going to be more limited, right? When they're more
Sure,
rigid, their
sure.
budgets are more rigid. When they have the opportunity to see the benefit of that investment, there's more opportunity with the design too,
Mhm.
I
I
find. So
bet, I bet.
yeah.
So I always have to bring this up now, it seems. How do you think AI is changing this? Because I remember I tried this tool. I don't remember the name. I'm not going to bother. And it's a presentation AI tool. And you give it a script and you say, "Hey, create a presentation for me." I tried it and I was like, I do not like this
Yeah.
output. It was just like,
Yep.
ugh. Maybe it's improved. I haven't touched it in 3 or 4 months, but are you starting to see AI creeping into this and starting to help people with their presentations?
I think if you look at AI as a tool, it's amazing. If you look at it as the end all be all and the thing that's
Right.
going to be the quick fix, that easy button, it's going to flop. It's going to fail
Yep.
for you,
Yep.
not for them, for that platform. It's for you. The power of a strong presentation is about that connection, that emotional,
Mhm. Mhm.
authentic, right? Collaboration, that conversation. You have to build that with human power.
I
You're
think
not
so
going to
too.
be able to
Yeah.
do that with AI. I love AI. I'm a visual person. I came from the art side of the world. I remember in 5th grade, I asked my mom if I could flunk my spelling test. Like, language has not been my key thing. That's part of why I actually love podcasting, because I'm refining this skill.
Right.
I use
Right.
AI to help craft emails that are just more eloquent or
Yes,
shorter or
exactly.
to the
Sure.
point, right? And then I refine it so it sounds like me. So again,
Mhm.
using AI and tools, and that's where also like there are some beautiful templates out there. I
Yeah,
find them really
sure.
hard to work with because I think they're built funny, right? I think I'm more simple or
Mm.
just more turnkey, but there's beautiful starting points when you can use something to get you started, right? And that's usually the hardest part, is showing up, starting, and especially when you get started only on the computer. I always encourage my clients to think about their presentation, their objectives, and that
Right.
story offline with post-its,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you limit your creativity when you start in a box. And so
Yes,
there is
yes.
so much power with that pen and that paper, or starting from somewhere so it doesn't feel like a blank slate, is
Mhm.
important. Being inspired, I use my own AI tools. I think that, Pinterest and just there's other platforms and royalty free stock sites, and those are
Sure.
great. Why
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel if you can use it to get you going and it's more efficient, and time is money. So how
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
merge that, but you can't take the human aspect of it. And then again, AI is powered by humans. Let's be real.
Yeah, it is powered by our content. That is true.
Yeah.
So, for the folks listening, and I think we have a wide range of people from kind of entry level in their careers all the way up to executives in their careers, what advice would you give them? If they necessarily aren't one of the folks who could afford to hire you, but what could they take away from this to immediately improve their presentation skills, their storytelling skills?
I would it goes back to the three basic principles: applying simplicity, consistency, and intentionality with your presentation from the beginning. Again,
Yeah.
to thinking about it the first time. I know I got to do this presentation. What's it going to be about? Who am I talking to the
Hmm.
delivery. And I think that also gives you the ability to plan and prep. And
Mm-hmm.
that combination not only gets your story better, it gets you more articulate, but it builds your confidence. And when you're
Right.
confident and you
Right.
share that, even if it's in an email, people feel that and they know it.
Fantastic. So, where can people follow you and learn more? I'm going to share links in the show notes. So, for those
Awesome.
of you listening, dig into the show notes and you can get the links. But, kind of verbally, where
Yeah.
can they find you?
So they can find me. My website is IamEmilySchneider.com. I'm also active. I love in networking and connecting on LinkedIn as well. So you can find me there. It's a great platform.
Fantastic. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Emily. Very
Thank
useful
you.
information that everybody can take away from this.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Larry.
Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with building the business of your dreams.